Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sigma Prism YouTube channel. Today, we're going to talk DAOs, what they are, why they matter, and what are their future uh, relevance in the crypto industry, but also perhaps even the organization of companies in the future as work shifts to remote locations and crosses borders more often than not than ever before in human history. So, without any further ado, we have here Paideia, Marty from Paideia, who is
Hey everyone.
he is working on the DAO tools on the Ergo side of things, and we also have with us two members from Summon Labs who are working on the Cardano side of things with their DAO. Welcome, guys.
Hey,
Hey, well, great to be
yeah,
here. Thank you.
yep, good to be here. And yeah, as you said, my name's Thomas. People call me TCT, and that's Tommy Crypto, and we're part of Summon Labs, and really the Summon ecosystem, and that's what we're doing on Cardano, is building out really an ecosystem for decentralized tool sets for any protocol or project to manage and operate on the blockchain.
Hey, and I'm Marty with Paideia, and we're kind of building the front end, back end, and smart contracts for DAO management software, so that anyone can utilize the DAO smart contracts on the Ergo blockchain, and they won't have to know how to write any code. They can just initiate a DAO, manage it, and anyone who's a member of that DAO can also vote and participate in the conversation.
Perfect. Um, right off the bat, what is a DAO? We know many of us know what the term means, but we don't really know what they do. It's kind of one of those mystic, hot words, kind of like metaverse, but with a lot more substance, I'm sure. So, a decentralized autonomous organization. First of all, what makes a DAO really a DAO in terms of decentralization? How do we measure that, or how do you guys view decentralization for that?
I guess I'll start. For me, a DAO is anything that it has certain gates in the code which prevent somebody from doing something in a non-transparent way, or it makes sure that shared funds and shared goals are determined by code rather than by individual people. So what that means is that if you want to have governance in the traditional sense, you basically put certain people in charge, and you trust that they'll execute on the goals of the group. And what a DAO tries to do is remove the opportunity for the human element to uh, it's kind of like take that away and do something malicious or do something that not everyone agreed with. So we do that with blockchain by putting some code in place that says once this vote has been passed and executed, the things that the code determined would happen do happen, and there's no way somebody could falsify that or alter that in an unfair way. So it tries to remove the human element, remove corruption and various maliciousness that can take place in group settings when humans trying to work together.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just jump in quickly. Yeah, and in terms of how I look at it too, that was a great explanation. On a very basic level, I look at it as any sort of group or shared cause that has a shared treasury. And so at a very high level, it's any group that has a shared vision, shared values, and they need to make decisions around a treasury, a shared treasury. And how they go about that can be unique. There's various token voting systems that are being created in these DAO tooling systems. And what we want to do is after those votes are collected, that those on-chain effects are then occur, so that that middle person is kind of taken out of the equation. So it kind of protects the group to a certain degree too.
Perfect. Very good, broad definition. I love it. Now that we've defined what a DAO is and their intentions and purpose, why are they relevant to create in the first place, for example, in the crypto industry or in the blockchain industry on Ergo and Cardano, respectively?
Yeah, hey, TCT. So yeah, basically, like Tommy and Marty were saying, right? When we say DAO, it probably doesn't do us any justice, right? That acronym, because it's much larger than the simple 3 words. But what people are usually trying to do, or what they mean by that, is replacing humans with code, right? And not replacing humans entirely, right? This isn't some AI-driven system, but replacing those failure points. A lot of times in any organization, even if it's democratically managed, you still have one person usually, maybe 2, who have to then execute, right, the wishes of the group. So this happens in really any type of organization. You have the sentiment of the group, and then you have one entity that has to be responsible to carry that out, or not lose the passwords, or not lose the keys, or not steal something. And so, yeah, anywhere where you can put some type of system on top of, and blockchain works very well for this, in those pain points to replace them, is really what we're trying to do. And I think when you kind of, really think about it, what we're doing is the most optimal autonomous organizations, right? Decentralization is a huge part of that, because that's how we accomplish not having a single failure point, through decentralization. But what we're aiming for is the most optimal organization. And today we work in such a remote way with people that a lot of times we've never met, or live, on the other side of the world. So that's what we're really doing. How I see it is we're really building tools to optimize this work.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in terms of some of those tools that are geared towards coordination, governance, treasury management, and then when you throw in the blockchain and how it provides transparency, immutability, auditability, when you then apply those things into a system, it allows perhaps a better system for individuals to use as they go forward, because of those things about the blockchain that make it so powerful. And I think that's really important to remember too. It's that those properties of the blockchain that allow us to kind of create these tools in a new way that make people, to a certain degree, behave a little bit more transparently, because everything is on the blockchain in a public ledger.
So by developing these tool sets, what type of goals do you imagine users that choose to opt out of sort of like the individual actors that they are in the crypto space? Is there a typical use case where you would want to organize this type of DAO on both blockchains or in general, where it really makes sense to do so? So what type of organization or what type of common goal is typical, or that you guys envision using these toolkits for in the future from community members from each of these chains?
Yeah. Are you asking anyone in particular? We probably all
no.
A few hours on this question probably, because what isn't, right? Like anything that we're doing on the blockchain today, from building protocols to compiling open source repositories and like user guides and building exchanges. You see investment clubs, right? DAOs that all they do is buy NFTs. DAOs, all they do is pool their money to buy investments, or buy some DAO tried to purchase a copy of the Constitution. So really today, even in traditional companies, we're spread out and we're working in these decentralized or distributed ways already. So a lot of these tools, and yeah, even for traditional companies and simple things like homeowners associations, even homeowners, HOAs, can benefit from a lot of these tools. And it's a huge benefit with little disruption. So it makes a lot of sense for anything where there's some set of parameters that have to be overseen, or some set of assets that have to be overseen.
Right. I can see how I can see how it could be applied to an innumerable amount of things, from literal government government representatives in a country, and having the type of transparency that many citizens usually complain about when it comes to political figures and officials, and where taxpayer money is going. I'm thinking of the biggest scale down to a tech startup, where you want to be able to audit yourself and see transparently where the funds are going, and how much funds are there for you if you were to be employed at a certain remote position, all the way to what you're describing, which is kind of the tip of the iceberg, where you pile in money and you could buy NFTs and do a bunch of different things. So with that being said, the tool set, how does one go about developing them for their community? What have you guys done? Maybe Marty, you can tell me what Paideia is currently doing, where I know the Ergo Foundation aims to take part in that. And then also something like the Sigma Knot program is also going to have that type of tool set as well, which include, again, a lot of things, including voting rights.
Yeah, for to build Paideia, we started with basically get everything on paper, write down the white paper, and just figure out exactly what features we want, what governance structures we want to allow, things like that. And then basically we set out to build the UI while simultaneously the backend and the smart contracts were being written. The UI is done, so you can go see that. You can play around with it at paideia.im/DAO. So you can see exactly what the DApp will look like. You can also go paideia.im/creation, I believe it is, or create, and you can walk through the process of creating a DAO. And basically what will happen is, once you've created the DAO, the smart contracts get initiated and the treasury is sent to a shared wallet. And that will have certain parameters that'll say, in order to spend these funds, somebody has to make a proposal, which becomes a smart contract deployed on the blockchain. And then if the certain number of votes pass that proposal based on the people who have the governance tokens, then that will pass and the funds will be unlocked and sent to the appropriate place. So all that's getting written on the Ergo blockchain, and the tool is basically there to let anyone use that without having to know how to build those transactions themselves. So that's kind of where we're at, quite a bit of progress. And actually, I'm curious for DAO, have you guys have already built smart contracts, but is the new project you're working on going to be sort of the front end for users to interact with them? Is that how it's set up?
Yeah, so that's a really good chance to kind of explain DAO, right? Because that's a really cool example of a DAO, or a decentralized organization. Because yeah, that's what they've been doing since last year. Last year at the hard fork, they started working on and building these tool sets. So there's smart contract systems like Agora for on-chain token governance. DAO built something called Roundtable, which is a multi-sig. In Cardano, we have Pluto scripts. Usually people call them smart contracts, and a few other languages now. And we have native scripts. So native scripts are what we use for simple multi-sig contracts. And so there's a multi-sig dApp. There's Agora v1, which is the first standard for token governance. And Summon is the backend and the interface for interacting with and parameterizing all these things. So you'll be able to go to, you can actually go to it right now, app.summonplatform.io. and see the interface. And we're slowly rolling things out to testnet right now during September, and mainnet. So we have a non-custodial token sale system. We deployed that to mainnet a couple weeks ago. A couple different voting frameworks for, like I said, on-chain, like with Agora, off-chain message signing voting, where you can actually use your cryptographic keys to sign messages and vote, but not spend transaction fees. So things like that are really good for non-critical voting, right? A lot of times projects are experimenting and they're using on-chain data voting, and it's really expensive. Everybody has to pay a transaction fee. You have a couple hundred people voting, it's a few hundred ADA. So using something like off-chain message signing voting in conjunction with things like Agora for on-chain token governance, multi-sig wallets, native scripts for autonomous treasury management within the DAO. So that's what SummonPlatform is going to be. It's going to be a set of APIs that you can connect to, as well as an interface. So you don't have to know how to code. You can interact with DAOs. You can even create your own. But it's also going to be a way for these more complex protocols to govern themselves, right? And for the users of these protocols to participate in the governance. So DAOs will have access to things like S vaults, where they can take a portion of a treasury, whether it's in a native script or a smart contract, and allocate that to a strategy, right? We're going to see a lot of DeFi protocols launching soon in Cardano. Things like Liquid, where you can lend and borrow assets, things like Indigo, synthetic assets, OptimFi. So as a user or token holder to some of these DAOs, you can come and actually participate in governance and do things like deploy strategies with treasury funds. So, vote on and off chain, even update parameters to protocols. So it's a pretty, it encompasses quite a lot. It's really an operating system for any type of protocol or, like you said, company or community organization.
What would it take for a broader user base to actually get involved with these types of tool sets? If they can be so widespread and encompass virtually any sort of common goal or any shared organization, what do you see the future of DAOs being? How can we get like your grandmother to get involved with, in the future, some sort of DAO that is relevant to her real life?
Yeah, I think we're seeing it, right? I think when we have things like this, right, when you can connect with APIs to a backend and initiate something and instantiate something like a native script multi-sig treasury, all of these, like I said, let's take an HOA, for example, right? They still use technology they don't understand, right? Somebody manages the bank account. Usually it's one person. And then there's 4, 5, could be up to 50 more people who are on that board and help manage the HOA. But one person, usually, sometimes 2 or 3, have control of this fund, right? And it's actually really expensive to insure HOAs because of this. That money gets, misused, mishandled all the time. So having an interface of their own that they can use, and instead of sending emails, getting signatures, encrypted emails, all they can do is, have their wallet go to the roundtable or the summon interface, and see that the other board members have signed, their key hashes are green, or their ADA handle, whatever we're using to identify, and they can autonomously, right, automatically spend funds from a joint account. Or I think obviously a lot sooner than that, what we're going to see is either small to even large investment clubs buy NFTs, sell NFTs, provide liquidity, take advantage of all the DeFi protocols that are coming.
Yeah, it is so it's such a wide use case that it can be a little difficult to narrow down as well. I can think of a million different things you could use a DAO for, and it would be better than the traditional way of doing organization and more convenient once you have the right user interface and you have the frameworks in place.
Yeah.
Marty, I know you. Oh, go ahead, Tommy.
Oh, sorry. No, no, that's okay. It's all right. Don't worry. Go ahead.
No, Marty, I was gonna ask you about the significance of user experience. I've been looking at your team's efforts in kind of simplifying a lot of the templates and the website for Paideia, and you actually hired a user experience guy strictly for that position. Why was it important to prioritize user experience so people don't get lost in the and all the techie, you know, uh, all the technical side that they may not necessarily care about.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up now because you were just saying, how many applications there are for DAOs. If you want people to use it, you have to make it as easy to use as Facebook. And I think like blockchain is a really powerful technology, but most people don't care. So our sort of like one of our ultimate goals is to make all the tools as easy to use as Facebook or even easier so that somebody can just hit a couple buttons, and they don't have to worry about anything. It's all kind of happening in the back end. Everything's taken care of and they can just do what they're trying to achieve rather than worrying about why it works or how it works. Um, a lot of times people are trying to sell you on their tech stack. We're just trying to reduce all the barriers for the end user to come and use our product.
Now, for I assume DAOs have typically their own governance token, right? Which is a way to directly invest into the project itself. Why is that important to having a native token assigned and directly correlated with a specific DAO?
For our system, the token determines how much vote weight you have. So there are, you can think of it like if I'm more vested in a project, I'll have a higher vote count. Essentially, like the more you're vested, the more you want it to succeed, right? Whereas somebody who's very lightly vested in a project doesn't care that much. So we typically weigh the voting based on like a 1-to-1 ratio, like 1,000 votes or 1,000 tokens represent 1,000 votes. One token represents one. There's another way to do it too, where you can use what's called quadratic voting, because some people feel that if you create a DAO and it's just the most wealthy people who have the most influence of how that DAO behaves and how the votes take place. With quadratic voting, what you can do is, let's say somebody with 10 votes would have less vote weight than 10 people with 1 vote each. So there's an actual calculation that you can use. So that's a system that we're going to try and experiment with in Paideia as well, to see if that helps make things a little more fair when there's certain heavy or certain like whales holding a significant amount of votes.
Right. And for the Cardano side, for the ADAO and the Summon Labs, Cardano itself is kind of interesting with as a blockchain when it comes to governance, right? Because there's so many developments going on with the blockchain itself. You have Vassal, you have different eras, and really the final one, the fifth era, Volterra, I believe, is the one where supposedly, IOHK or IOG will kind of give the final version of governance to the community. They'll give you the keys to the kingdom. And it's interesting. The reason I bring that up is because it seems that having people take the initiative and create DAOs on the Cardano side can already help to accelerate that process of governance and kind of giving that more power to the community without waiting for Cardano and IOG to kind of catch up and get around to that, especially as it pertains to stake pool operators and kind of community consensus about what we're going to rally around. Am I correct in thinking about that in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. The one of the things about Cardano is that they have this Catalyst fund, and as we work towards Voltaire, Catalyst is almost an experiment towards that. And so we do have at the high level Catalyst where they're trying to figure out some of these systems. But with the different tooling that we're creating at the Summon Labs and at Paideia, we're allowing organizations to effectively do the same thing with these tools, whether it be kind of a community decentralized innovation fund that's specific to a community, and that community can decide where those funds go, how to reach consensus, and those type of things. But definitely, these are the tools that will allow multiple communities to have these kind of innovation funds, I believe.
Right. That's right, Tommy. Like Cardano, yes, there's already a lot of community involvement. The SIP process is the community is very involved in. A lot of people who have been there from the beginning, a lot of people who are brand new, because anybody is able to get involved. And they're pretty vocal about that. There's always new SIPs being talked about, even on Twitter. So yeah, working up to, governing the parameters of the protocol, that's a lot different than even still just governing protocols on top of Cardano, governance for individual protocols. But they all do, use the same tools, use the same theories, and Catalyst is a perfect example, like Tommy said, experimenting with configuring these tools, because you're not going to use the same configuration for every organization or everything that you're trying to actually govern. A treasury is a lot different than the parameters of a layer 1 blockchain.
Right. What are kind of the pros and cons of building out the tools that you're doing with Summon Labs and DAO on Cardano's blockchain? Are there any cons at all that you can think of? Are there any major pros that if you were trying to do this for another blockchain, you'd be like, ooh, I don't know about that?
Well, yeah, when it comes to decentralized governance, it's a huge benefit, right? The past few years, there's been a lot of research on DAOs in the EVM space. The past 2 years specifically, more towards looking at UTXO and specifically Cardano, because a lot of these hurdles are inherently solved with Cardano, right? Determinism, high fees, capital efficiency. So, from a governance standpoint and like an optimal standpoint, Cardano is huge. Cardano makes a huge difference, especially lately. It's been progressing so quickly with things like Plutarch, and now there's a couple new languages that people have been using recently. Cardano is so versatile, so there's really no limit to what we can do. And like you said, Basel is right around the corner. So as time progresses, Cardano will, continue to do these hard forks and these upgrades. That's how it was designed. So being able to take advantage of those, yeah, it's pretty great. We can also move really quick and solve problems that, people have been trying to solve for years. DAOs, organizations, protocols, they do things like bridge over to side chains. Some of them have gone as far as building their own side chains, just to get away from a lot of these problems. And more often than not, they're brought with their own problems like centralization, security. So there's a lot of advantages, right? Documentation is obviously lacking for anything in a new ecosystem, but that's where we hope to really help. I think, there's a lot of organizations, not only a DAO, that are, and even just individuals in the community that are building a lot of these tools and libraries and open sourcing them. So as more and more people build these open source tools and libraries, then we can add them to Summon so people can interact easily with them and really have a place to interoperate, right, with all these other protocols.
Perfect. What do you make of the stake pool operate? I don't want to say controversy, but what is your opinion on kind of, and I'm not well versed in this, so excuse me if I step on any toes on the Cardano side. This idea that since Cardano is essentially the barrier to entry is capital primarily, and you can essentially pledge your own ADA, enough ADA as the variable K, I think is saturation K is called. As that goes up, you can pretty much use your own capital to be able to have a better chance of being able to mint the next block in an epic on Cardano. And then there's like people that say that, well, if you kind of stop those actors that do have deep pockets, you are now creating more centralization and rules around a free market enterprise, which is stake pool operators choosing where to put their ADA and choosing how they, where the ADA comes from, whether it be popularity or whether it be utility and charities and things like that, or just people with deep pockets. I don't want to put you in the hot seat, but where do you stand on that? And can you shed a bit more light about what I'm referring to?
Yeah. I think a lot of it's kind of just talk, right? There's always dramas around anything. The Cardano proof of stake system, Ouroboros, is actually really reliable. It's been running now without any downtime. And you'll hear dramas about single pool, multi-pool, about the K parameter. Really, all these parameters are configurable, right? We can use the CIP process to change these very easily. They don't even require a hard fork, a lot of them. So, there are parameters like K that haven't been looked at for a while or haven't been reset for a while. So I hear a lot of talks around that, and I think there's really no better way to do that, and except for the community to talk, right? The SIP editors to put in some work and people to review and actually take all these ideas. I've seen a lot of good ideas for some parameter changes, but it also has a lot of randomness in it, right? The block production, and I think it's an amazing tool. There are things that can be negative. You have to actually think about what you're doing. ISPOs, for example, right now you're able to, and this is how we bootstrap Summon, is spin up a stake pool and offer a token for the project in exchange for a delegator's ADA rewards. So that's a huge thing for any project, right? Because you can bootstrap capital. You're earning all the 4% per year, 4 to 5% ADA rewards in exchange for, in this case, the Summon token. So a lot of projects have used that as a way to get revenue to build these projects. To me, it's a lot more enjoyable than an ICO, right? I think to a lot of people who are, maybe speculators or investors, it's way more passive than something like an ICO, right? Where you're buying tokens. And then for a project, it's amazing, right? Because you bootstrap the stake pool. In our case now, we have a stake pool for when the ISPO is over. We're planning on donating it to ADAO, right? Because operator is now going to run this, and those rewards go back to the delegator and the operator. And in Cardano, you can set it anywhere from 0 to 100%. So in the case of an ISPO, you'll do something like 50, 99%. But normally stake pools operate anywhere between like 0 and 5%. So it's a great way for delegators to delegate to a cause they like, whether it's funding open source development, water, pet shelters. There's so many different charities and reasons people run stake pools. So yeah, I mean, there's going to be negatives with anything. I think the Cardano POS system is probably the best one out there by far. It'd be hard to find another one that's comparable.
Yeah, for proof of stake, I actually originally came from the Cardano community, but back when you didn't have smart contracts necessarily, and from a distance, I've seen the DeFi space on Cardano just boom to the point where I don't even recognize it anymore. So
Yeah.
it was with the, I hate to pronounce it. I feel like I'll get it wrong. Gogun.
And so we'll do that
Yeah.
because while Cardano didn't have smart contracts, developers were testing with Plutus, right? A lot of the developers on Summon, Riley specifically was developing in Plutus before it was even live. And now a lot of them are, developing and testing with Vasil on the preview testnet. So I think that's going to surprise people very soon, right? When these protocols like Liquid, Indigo, Optum, when they're not only launching, but ready for Vasil as well. So yeah, Cardano, it moves slow, but if you don't keep an eye on it, you will miss it. It will surprise you.
Hey, Marty, mentioning the ISPOs, which is a great tool to bootstrap. I'm sure you'll find a lot of parallels between that method of launching a token fairly and distributing it fairly, and Ergo Pad and GetBlock, the way you guys have done that for mining as well. Now, Ergo Pad was started before you had the subpool feature with GetBlock, but how will Paideia also be spread out to the community? Will it be through a fairly, I hate the acronym, fair initial mining offering as well?
Actually, Paideia was launched several months ago through an IDO on the ErgoPad platform. So we've done that already, and now the staking contracts are live, so you can stake your Paideia. In staking version 3, that'll be sort of how DAOs operate. So you'll stake your tokens, your governance tokens. You may or may not receive staking rewards, but that by staking, you'll also be staking to proposals to receive an opportunity to vote. Through Paideia, you'll receive a share of the platform fees. So Paideia tokens will be the payment method for using the platform. When you create a proposal, you'll put up collateral in the form of Paideia tokens, and there will be some fees that will be distributed to stakers. But yeah, through Ergo, I mean, the ISPOs on Cardano are great. We'd love to start seeing some cross-platform projects. I mean, there is Neta where they're doing an ISPO on Cardano, they're doing staking on Ergo, and once we have a bridge between the two, you're going to see a lot more coming. I think Rosenbridge through Spectrum Finance is coming quite soon. And that's when you'll see hybrid projects that'll do an ISPO, an initial mining offering, using either GetBlock or GWAP There's going to be so many ways to raise funds and manage them as groups. It's going to be really cool to see, I think. Global governance.
Yeah. I've talked to more than one project now who's interested in just that, operating on both Cardano and Ergo, which we sort of seen before with things like bridges, right, and EVM, but not like this. It'll be interesting. Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool.
You're going to see a proof of work chain and a proof of stake chain working kind of in tandem. I mean, I expect there'll be a ton of crossover with the UTXO as a backing. It's just it's really promising in comparison to what already exists, in my opinion. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, I think we'll benefit heavily from the added interest from the Cardano community. It'd be nice if Cardano had, their own Bitcoin that actually has smart contracts and could do all the things and kind of stand toe to toe and have that hybrid approach, because obviously Bitcoin can't do that. And from the proof of work side, you don't really have any substitute for Bitcoin to stand as a third generation blockchain other than Ergo. And I think with Cardano, I don't really like the arguments for that people choose a side that I'm only strictly proof of work or proof of stake. I think there's use cases for both types of approaches. I've said in a few interviews, well, proof of work is, the most time tested and we all understand it more, and there's more documentation, research around it. And but not everybody would like to mine, right? If we're being honest, there are people around the world that do have fluctuating overhead costs when it comes to electricity. It's not as steady as maybe we take for granted in North America. For example, if there's a geopolitical turmoil like in Eastern Europe right now, and how fuel gets across for different things, mining could be a real burden for a lot of people that don't have that predictable overhead cost, and they may just want to keep it simple approach and just buy ADA and move on with life. So I think cooperation between serious projects like these two blockchains that are very research driven and are looking to help create better solutions for people around the world in real life, primarily as well. Past crypto, I think it will be great. And I interviewed Spectrum Labs about their cross-chain DEX, and it was really interesting. And of course, they have to learn how to script or program in Plutus, right, and also in Ergo script. And it's really great, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that liquidity will just cross-pollinate so well. And it's going to be hard not to see the benefits of both sides working together versus in their own corners. And hopefully that kind of those arguments will also kind of die down. So with that being said, when can we expect the Paideia launch? And for Summon Labs, is your toolkit already available, or is it coming out? Like, when can we expect people to get their hands on all of these things if they're not already out?
Paideia launch is going to be, we're waiting for Ergo Node 5.0. The smart contracts are still in development, so those will need to be tested, obviously, and audited. But 5.0 is about 3 to 3.5 months away, and I expect we could probably launch some at least alpha testing on-chain stuff around that time. And in the next week or so, you'll be able to go in, create a DAO, and test out Ergo Auth and log in with your Ergo wallet, and actually create a discussion that only people who have the governance token for a specific DAO can participate in. So that should be in the next week. You'll be able to create a DAO on the platform and play around with it with no treasury and no voting, but full discussion and features like that.
Yeah. And as far as Summon goes, right now there's a lot of things you can do. You can already go create a multi-sig wallet with something like the Roundtable. That's roundtable.theadao.io. The adao.io is where you can get to a lot of this stuff. So we're slowly moving that over. Well, not slowly, very, very methodically moving that over to the Summon interface, right? Bringing new features to things like Roundtable, Agora. Those contracts are all code complete, open sourced. They're actually going through their first official audit soon. But those contracts have been open sourced and complete for quite a while. So running end-to-end tests on testnet with those, and then bringing them over to mainnet. All that is a very iterative process that started August and will go through September, and really just continue bringing over these new modules, right? Things like the non-custodial token sale, so projects can launch a token sale. Things like a staking portal, so you'll be able to stake and reward through things like the Agora module for governance, or you'll be able to create some kind of stake pool to reward LP tokens. So there's a million things you can do, a bunch of different modules. So the rest of this year is, getting those on testnet and bringing them over iteratively, as they develop. But a lot of it is already code complete, open sourced. And if you look in things like the DAO GitHub, you'll find a lot of that there already. And on the DAO website, even some live dApps. But yeah, app, so that's app.summonplatform.com is where you'll see this stuff coming out. And, if you're a project on Cardano and you want to, test and give feedback on the testnet and how we're deploying a lot of these modules, definitely reach out. The SummonPlatform.io is the information website, but you can find us easily on Twitter, the Discord, and we're always looking for feedback, right? Because a lot of these tools we're developing with things like DAO in mind, or other projects that we've been building and working on. So we're always looking for, anybody building in Cardano or on Ergo even.
Perfect. I'll put a few of the links you mentioned in the description of our YouTube video. That way people can find out more about what you're building. I'm not sure, Marty, are you there as well? Is there any resources you would like people to check out that may be interested in Paideia?
Yeah, mainly the website Paideia.im. The white paper's linked there, all the socials, and if you drop into Telegram or Discord, we're always happy to have a chat and talk about what's coming.
Perfect. Oh, one final question. What was the process in choosing the tokenomics for the native governance tokens for each of your respective DAOs? What does that look like, and how do you conceptualize that, pick a number, and decide how it will be, the utility, which we already discussed? How does that work?
Yeah, I don't mind going first. I have a 6-year-old yelling for mom, but for us, it was very methodical, right? Like we had goals, right? And missions that we were planning and intending to accomplish. So that had a lot to do with the tokenomics of the actual system. So things like open source partners, right? 10% of the governance tokens are dedicated to open source partners, right? Making sure communities, DAOs like DAO are able to continue this open source development, right? Especially with DAOs, everything, these contracts are all open source, and that's really what is causing the ecosystem to expand so quickly, right? These developers are coming in, they're seeing these open source examples, they're building a protocol, they're able to connect to these other protocols, and that's where interoperability comes from, right? So it's really important that we continue incentivizing that. And we have a large team. We have a 20-person team just at the moment when it comes down to advisors, ambassadors, and the core team building the protocol. So really all of these things, right, have to be considered when actually drafting out your tokenomics, because this is something that eventually will be governed by the token holders. Right now, a lot of these parameters are set with the community, but really they're set by the Summon Association. So as these tokens get released, the governance of the whole system goes and falls into the hands of the token holders. So leading up to it, that's why it's so important that you really deeply think about tokenomics, and the community who's actually going to be running the protocol. Like, how are they incentivized? What are they incentivized by? Because if it's just monetary gain, and for things like yield farming, right, we see that fail time and time again, because you're incentivizing the thing, you're not incentivizing what you're trying to achieve. You're incentivizing something else. So yeah, you have to think really deeply about that. And that's why there are so many different allocations with the summon token. And even those categories are broken down further. So most allocation is anywhere from like 2 to 10%. And there's quite a few of them out of 1 billion tokens. So yeah, definitely, if you check out the website, and you'll see all those allocations and a pretty good description of each one.
Perfect. Marty, if you would like to add anything to that at all, you may, before we wrap up, about how you design tokenomics for pretty much a tool set and governance in general. I mean, somebody has to call the shots on that before people get their hands on it.
Yeah, for ErgoPad launched IDOs, we typically try and release the tokens to the majority, to the community, because then once the DAO is operational, we want the community to take part in that and actually vote for the next steps. So we basically did the initial seed, staker, and strategic rounds to raise the funds to get to MVP. And once we're at MVP, we hope that the platform itself will raise funds through the use of the platform, and in doing so, we'll give the community an opportunity to vote on what we build next. There's a lot of features that we haven't got to through the initial development. So hopefully by the end of the year, we're up and running, and we can start to see how the community guides the project and really see how the DAO functions and operates. The tokenomics are broken down also on the website in the About section, if you want to see further.
Beautiful. Well, without any further ado, I think we all learned a bit more about DAOs and how they function and why they're relevant. And I would anticipate we're going to see much more of them in everyday life, and as kind of the industry grows and our respective platforms also grow in prominence away from a lot of the scandalous ones, or ones that are rife with scandal and a bunch of other things. I'm not going to mention them right now. Actually, I'm sorry. One final thing. Do you guys have any concern about legislation and legalities or anything on that? Is there anything that you would like to mention? I know that at least in my interpretation of the law, open source code is also protected under free speech, and in most modern countries. Is there any fear that you guys ever undergo, like, whoa, I don't want to get in trouble for what I'm building because it challenges the traditional way of doing things, and organization in the traditional sense is a very powerful thing, and I'm sure they wouldn't want to be disrupted for any reason.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm already 5 minutes late for my next call, and I shouldn't get into this question because I will. It's a big one, right? And I could say so many things about it, but scared, no. Aware, right? Yes. We're not naive, and there's a lot of gray areas right now. But that's why it's really important to seek out the clearest regulation, right? That's why when these institutions and these companies, for example, you have the Ergo Foundation, you have the Cardano Foundation, we have the Summon Association, right? We seek out jurisdictions that do have some clarity. So, we can only do the best we can do, right? And that's the way that we've decided to do it, right? Take some inspiration from things like the Cardano Foundation, the Ergo Foundation, and try to take it one step further, right? Try to make it better as new regulations come out, and see what works, right? We have DAO, which is the on-chain DAO. It's an open source community, no legal jurisdiction. And then you have things like the Summon Association, which is a real Swiss association with board members and a president. Things like Summon Labs, that I'm the CEO of, which is a development company that's located in the US. So there's a million ways to do things, but making sure that you try to seek out the clear way, right? Because there are some clear regulations, even in places like the US. And as those progress, hopefully these examples that we're setting, right, could have, sway in the way these regulations and these laws are written. So, my theory has always been that we just need to build better systems and place it next to the existing ones, because a side-by-side is hard to argue with. So that's what we're attempting with things like the Summon ecosystem. We're attempting to build better systems that can build organizations that will actually last, even through new regulation.
Perfect. That's a perfect way to end it, actually. So I want to thank you, all three of you, for your time, and thank you all for watching.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank
See
you
you in the
guys.
next one.
Pleasure. Thank you.